its battle against Iran, even as it achieves key objectives. The latest from the Media Line's Felice Friedson.
While television screens worldwide remain bright with news reports of Israeli warplanes over Tehran and Iranian missiles intercepting in the Israeli heartland, the question of the war remains. Can Israel go it alone? As munitions are exhausted and battle plans become more complex, must the Jewish state enlist the direct participation of American forces to formulate its exit strategy? In a war only days old, but already noted for using deception and disinformation as a weapon in the Israeli and American arsenals, speculation over Washington providing the feared bunker-busting bomb, presumed necessary to complete its mission of eradicating Iran's nuclear program, remains rife. I'm Felice Friedson, Town Hall News, Jerusalem.
Breaking news and analysis at themedialine.org and townhall.com. It's a building that for centuries has provided a home for such masterpieces as the Mona Lisa and the Venus de Milo. But now, as Keith Peters reports, the famed Paris Art Museum is in need of a little TLC.
The Louvre Museum failed to open on time Monday, leaving thousands of visitors stuck in long, unmoving lines. A union representative said staff at the world's most visited museum are protesting working conditions. The disruption was caused by a spontaneous movement among front-of-house staff, including gallery attendants, reception, and security workers. A few months ago, President Emmanuel Macron unveiled a sweeping decade-long plan to rescue the Louvre from precisely the problems now boiling over: water leaks, dangerous temperature swings, outdated infrastructure, and foot traffic far beyond what the museum can handle. Keith Peters, Washington.
You'll find more on these stories at townhall.com. From Washington, I'm Bob Agnew.
Number one for live and local
conservative talk.
You can take these facts.
I know for a fact.
It's just about time.
It's not now. When?
Oh, there's just so much to say and not enough time to say it or do it.
I'm sorry. This is our country. This is the country that you and I love.
I'm kind of not surprised.
Man, that's what they need.
Very upset.
A lot of fear.
I agree with that, and well, who couldn't agree with it? It's a fact.
101.9 and 94.1.
St. Louis is number one for conservative talk.
News Talk STL.
We'll prevail.
This hour of News Talk STL brought to you by Chris Cooper and Serenity Wealth Management. Discover little-known strategies that could be the difference between choosing the care you deserve or having someone else decide it for you. Get a free copy of Chris's book at serenityltc.com. Because truth matters.
Let's speak that truth.
Because understanding matters.
Let's break this down.
With all that's happening,
And it's happening a lot faster.
what matters most is,
The only question that matters here.
are you informed?
Important issues that are facing this country.
Depend on us.
The latest events.
The information you need
Here are the facts.
when you need it.
We always have great conversations.
You guys have a great radio station.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
Hot and humid today. The high temperature about 91, but that heat index getting up to 94. And we are looking at maybe just a spot shower this afternoon, but very little rain anticipated today. Overnight lows tonight in the upper 60s. Tomorrow won't be as hot because there's rain moving in, and there's a chance that we could see some severe storms tomorrow afternoon with wind and hail the primary threats. Tornadoes possible, but not likely. I'm KMOV First Alert meteorologist Kent Earhart.
So you can see here they're firing up more flashbangs.
As ICE arrests trigger LA riots,
Federal agents are being attacked in the city of Los Angeles.
the Trump administration responds.
The president chose the safety of this community over waiting for Governor Newsom to get some sanity.
And California officials bristle.
I do not believe that is called for.
The president of the United States is sowing chaos and confusion.
What happens next happens here.
We're not going to let our country be torn apart.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL. This hour of Colombo and Company brought to you by Gutter Pros. Water goes where we tell it. Call 314-656-7195 or visit them at gutterpros.com.
Isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country?
With our border now secure,
I worry for people of color.
the deportation process is coming under scrutiny.
How the mayors in these sanctuary jurisdictions are dealing with it, that's interesting.
How will resistance be resolved?
It absolutely puts their lives and their family lives in danger.
Democrats will never win a national election again if they continue to protect criminals more than they do innocent Americans.
Get in on the conversation.
Safety is our primary concern.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
been engaged with better best to rearrange. I'm talking here to me alone. I listen to the finest work song, the finest of hours, the finest of hours.
Hello and welcome to Colombo and Company on a Tuesday afternoon here on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL. Tony Colombo here in studio with producer Ashlyn, and we have got a lot to cover today. Susie Moore from Red State will be with us in about an hour, but I want to jump in with our guest that will be here for the entire 2 o'clock hour and get you up to speed on what is happening in the Middle East as things are ramping up quickly. And so we're keeping an eye on all of these things. And to help us make sense of this crazy world is our friend Crane Durham from nothingbutTruth.com. And Crane, as the world crumbles around us, brothers don't shake hands. Brothers got a hug.
And as I go in for the hug, it's in slow motion. And I'm moving. And you see a glint in my eye, a promise.
One in my eye too.
And it's because ever since I've been doing this program and been on the radio and had air in my lungs to breathe post 79, I've been calling for the end of the Iranian regime. Thank you, Jesus. It's about to happen.
So you believe that? You believe that this is going to be, because this conflict has been going on for decades, if not centuries. So if there is going to be a definitive or at least a much larger impact or result this time than all of these other instances throughout history, that would be literally world history.
Yeah, it would be world history. And obviously you go into a whole lot of things when it comes to the notion of regime change. And they're not talking about regime change. They're talking about obviously denuclearizing them for good. But with that, they're going to take out the leadership because the threat is always there with the malocracy. So I think what we're seeing here, Jimmy Carter made a huge mistake, and this is how really bad presidents, like Carter was like one of the worst presidents. And you see when they make a decision like they did and not to obviously support the Shah, this is what happens. And it lasts, and it ends up with a lot of people dead, a lot of Americans dead. Hezbollah, blood on their hands. That is a creation of the Iranian government. Plus all those soldiers in Iraq who are dealing with Iranian proxies within Iraq during that war. So I think this is a great day. And really, to the people of Iran, thank you, President Obama. I'm not really thanking you. I just want to highlight
sarcasm.
What absolute coward that man is. And how people say, well, when you're anti-war and you're pro-peace and you don't want to get involved in anybody's affairs, well, that's a very good thing. Really, when the people are standing up and you can lend vocal and moral support, plus through non-government organizations, work with people, work with the opposition, if you will, in Iran, which there is one, both inside and outside. So I think, this is a long time coming. And for the isolationists out there, history is not your friend. And it's not because people who want to engage are warmongers and we really just get our jollies out of going to war. Everybody knows war sucks. It doesn't take a Rip and Einstein to figure that one out. So if you know that, you also know there are degrees and escalation tactics that you can use, and you can do many things, especially when you are the leader of the free world. So the little Satan, which is Israel, according to Iran,
Yep.
and the big Satan, America, according to Iran.
Mhm.
There should be no daylight between us when it comes to removing that regime completely.
I want to pick up on something just to slightly change the subject, and we're not going anywhere because
Sure.
there's lots to talk about here. But when you were explaining that situation, and going back to Jimmy Carter and how this is something that's been going on for decades and decades, if not centuries, as I mentioned. This is one of the. I think this is a moment where we can talk about how the division of the political parties here in America can have a very bad influence or impact on the world stage. And here's what I mean. And this is not a 2025 thing. You could say the same thing about Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan in 1980.
Yeah.
So, decades here as well.
Gotcha.
When you are dealing with something like a war that has gone on for decades, and you have one leader, one dictator, or a handful of dictators on the other side of the world that are going to be there for life, and they have a belief, and they have all this power, and they have all this military and everything else. The president of the United States, while being the most powerful man in the world, is only the most powerful man in the world for 4 or maybe 8 years. So all of these presidents come along, and they may have some of them may truly want to change the world and do something big and end a terrorist regime or something like that. But they realize that they only have so much time to get things done. They probably want to win. If it's their first term, they probably want to win another election. If it's their second term, they probably want to do as much stuff as they can, for the American people before leaving office. And there's lots of other problems to solve, here at home, especially, but around the world as well. So it's way easier to just deal with when they attack an ally, or they start to get a little too big for their britches, to sort of put them back in their place. But the complicated long-term focus that it takes to overturn a regime in a country that has been, in a system that has been, deep in the roots of that country for a very long time, it takes a lot of work, and it takes a long time. And American presidents don't have a long time, relatively speaking. So you get, at best, somebody who has good intentions and will knock down like I said, cut them down to size when they get a little bit too big for their britches. And at worst, people that would just much rather satiate, try to keep them quiet and happy, so they're not making bad, they're not looking bad on the world stage, so they can look good back here at home. And bad actors like the Ayatollah in Iran can take advantage of that. If the United States, and I'm not saying we should change the way we do elections. I'm not kidding. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is, when the two parties are so divided, and the world knows that, and they know that one president is not going to follow up on what the previous president started, there's no fear for that long-term consequences. Yeah. If there was more partnership, or if there was more people, if there was more cooperation,
if our differences would stop at the water's edge.
If they knew, right, exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. If countries like Iran and North Korea and China and Russia, if they knew that the next president is literally going to pick up where the last one left off when it comes to whatever kind of change they're trying to invoke, I think that there would be a lot more consequences, and I think a lot different actions on the world stage. But we have presidents that don't want to invest the time and effort into, even presidents that have good intentions, because they also want it. They also know that they can do other great things for America, and they want to try to accomplish those things. And then you have not so good presidents that would just rather keep everything quiet and under the rug so they can continue to look like a hero. And I think understanding that gives you a better understanding of why this has been has has existed for such a very, very long time. And I'm not saying I'm not saying we, again, at all saying we should, that I think that we should change the way that we elect presidents or term limits or anything like that. I am saying that cooperation and working together, especially on the world stage when it comes to big issues, no matter how much you disagree in other areas, would be something that would be very beneficial for the country and for the world.
Amen. And it's a point that Bruce Thornton, historian over at the Hoover Institution and author of The Wages of Appeasement, he wrote a piece a few years back discussing this very point about how the handoff from from Bush to Obama, for example, went. And Bush had won the peace in Iraq. Excuse me, our American soldiers, as President Bush would absolutely acknowledge first and foremost, won the peace through the surge, handed off a peaceful, relatively Iraq to Barack Obama. Obama basically said, hey, we're going to pull our troops out. It's time for you all to do the heavy lifting. And didn't maybe realize, but we all knew it would create a vacuum. And next thing you know, you've got ISIS. I digress, only to come back to that point. What you are saying is something that even during the Cold War, we could not do. For example, when it came to Vietnam, and a lot of people have written about Vietnam and talked about Vietnam, and I think they've taken the wrong lessons from Vietnam oftentimes. I think that because people like Phil Jennings, who wrote the book Politically Incorrect Guide to the Vietnam War, will kind of give you the context to the revisionist view of the Vietnam War and what was going on there. And so understand, we basically had it won, and Congress undermined our support for the South Vietnamese and voted not to support them. And then it created a vacuum. Of course, North Vietnam and China were perfectly willing to come right in, as well as the Russians. But that, I digress again to say that these things have happened, okay? And we've known these things through the years. Russia tried to use useful idiots against us consistently. We see useful idiots being used by oftentimes our enemies to exploit the divisions that we have in our country, where we should be pretty unified on. Useful idiots like on college campuses that are Jew haters and anti-Semites and anti-Zionists. Okay, so they're what you're recognizing is somebody could go forward, have a policy, and hey, all of a sudden people are voting for a war against a war they voted for in 3-year time, and they're changing their position. And so now you've split the parties, and our enemies know that.
Yep.
So if we would have bailed out of Iraq after 2004, wouldn't have had the surge. And I'll tell you, it would be a lot worse place than it is today. It's actually much better than we thought. But again, our enemies know this. So it'd be nice to have a disciplined conversation and recognize that our enemies use the left against our own goals, our own unified goals as Americans. And that's what the North Vietnamese knew. They knew that. And that's why we hear the great protest movement and all those damn hippies back in the 60s. And they really stood up for peace. No, they stood up for the enemy. They were being used by the enemy. Now, I'm sure there were some really good people, well-meaning people, but they were being used by the enemy. And if you have a window, whether it's 4 years or 8 years, you got a problem there. Okay. And the problem is that we will divide ourselves politically, which is fine to have intellectually honest discussions, but it's not fine to accuse one side of basically saying, hey, you love war and you want people to die, and I'm over here and I just want peace. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, there's a reason people go to war, and oftentimes it is to secure the peace because there's no other way to do it. Like we have in Iran, there's no other way to do it than replace that regime, because they will constantly search for a nuclear weapon, and they are not rational actors in Iran because they're 12ers. They believe in the 12th Imam coming back, and they can cause that to happen through a nuclear war. That's a very thumbnail very cliff noted sketch of their belief system. But that's the truth. And for us to do this is a great step. Israel's taken it. I think we need bunker busters to take care of business. But as you said, the problem is our policy, our foreign policy, a war will only be good for one term, if that. And then it comes to the second part. And it's so important to understand that just because the emotion of the reason we're at war goes away doesn't mean the threat goes away. You measure it by the threat. You measure it by defining victory. And unfortunately, we haven't done that in the recent past, certainly.
No, and your point of our enemies our enemies are very aware of the political situation and division in our country and have been over the decades. And listen, it feels like we're more divided now, or there's more, craziness out there today than maybe ever in time. I'm not sure that's the case. We've had some pretty wild division in our country's history, but I think that we're certainly at an era that will be one of those that you point to when you talk about, how far apart Republicans and Democrats are right now. When you have a country that, can't even agree, that you can't even say the sentence terrorists are bad. And get agreement, or ask the question, what is a woman, and get any agreement. So they know that. They know that. And they know, the other war, Vladimir Putin knew that there's at least a couple more years of Joe Biden running the show over there. This is the perfect time to start some trouble. They are definitely watching and taking advantage of these things where they can. But there could be some major developments, major actions taken very soon by this Trump administration against the
some major. Sorry, that was me.
I like to hear that.
I like watching you too.
Like to hear me twice. Yeah,
I want you to know I like to see my picture of.
I like it.
A very old picture of mine. I really want to look like that guy again. I will at some point. I mean, I'm the same guy. I got the videos, but I got to tell you, that's a really good-looking kid right there.
There you go. There you go.
Back at you. You're looking strong as ever.
Hey, thanks, buddy. So, all right,
in a brotherly love way.
Yeah. Love fest aside, let's get into let's get a full update on where we're at as we speak right now. There's been, just in the last hour, there's been an update and some information released by the White House. There's also been statements made by Israel in the last hour or so as we sort of set the stage for what could happen here in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, the coming days, certainly over in the Middle East. So we'll fill you in on all of that as we continue the conversation with Crane Durham from nothingbuttruth.com next here on Colombo and Company.
I see a red door and I want it painted black.
News, analysis, opinion.
It almost seems common sense, but, alas, common sense isn't so common these days.
News Talk STL.
If you have a problem with your gutters or your siding or the fascia soffit on your home or at your business, there is one team to call that stands above the rest in the St. Louis area, and that, of course, is the Gutter Pros. You hear Dave Sylvester, our buddy from Gutter Pros, in the studio with us all the time. The great thing about Gutter Pros is they are a St. Louis business, a company that is here and will always be here. One of the things that has come along with all of the storms, with all the severe weather that we have seen in our area over the last few months, is a lot of these folks that fly in from other parts of the country and start knocking on your doors and wanting to do work on your home. And if something goes wrong or the work isn't what it should be, how do you get a hold of that guy down the road? You don't. But the Gutter Pros are there for you. They're your all-in-one gutter service team that brings years of experience and quality that's affordable right to your doorstep. And again, the number one part of that is that they are local. They have been here and they will be here. I can tell you from personal experience that the Gutter Pros are the best. So, of course, when it comes to your gutters, they're called the Gutter Pros. They got you covered. Leak protection, gutter repair, new gutter installation, but also siding all across your home. Siding repair, new siding installation. They have you covered there as well. They also offer free estimates. So if your home's been through it, like so many of the folks in the area over the last few years, and you want to have somebody come out and take a look, let you know if there is a problem, if there's not a problem, take advantage of that free estimate offer from the Gutter Pros. Call them now at 314-656-7195 or just go to the website gutterpros.com.
Hey, Jamie Allman here for the great Window World. Just over the last 20 years of Window World being in St. Louis, they've improved the look and thermal efficiency of more than 76,000 customers in St. Louis. Plus, Window World windows come with a lifetime warranty that covers all parts, glass breakage, and labor. And now Window World is now offering 36 months, same as cash financing with approved credit. Call them today at 314-993-1800, 314-993-1800.
Hey, want to amaze your friends when they visit? They'll be impressed when they see your custom-made draperies, blinds, or shutters. Michael Proctor will personally help you select the correct colors to truly showcase your home. Then he will actually design, personally install everything. No overhead markup. That's going to save you money on draperies, blinds, or shutters.
Call for an appointment at your home. Spell Proctor like doctor.
Graduation season is here. Make your parties memorable with Anthony's Produce beautiful fruit and vegetable trays. Perfect for any special event. We're featuring the freshest local produce coming into season, including the best tomatoes in town. Anthony's is your one-stop shop for everything you need. Fresh bison, beef, chicken, and pork. Delicious Fazio bread straight from the bakery. Anthony's Produce on Jungerman in St. Peters. Call 636-936-0496 or stop by today.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
$18 million more for Sam Page for animal shelter upgrades? David Stokes of the Show Me Institute to discuss at 4:20.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps. Weekdays at 4
on News Talk STL.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 119-94.1 News Talk STL. What is that? What are you playing? What is that? What journey is that? Oh, it's Daughtry doing that song. Okay. I was like, we got serious things to talk about, but that was too much. That's not Journey. What am I hearing? Sorry. Hello. Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 119-94.1 News Talk STL. I'm Tony Colombo here in studio with producer Ashlyn, and on the line with us is Crane Durham from nothingbutTruth.com. In that first segment, if you missed it, that conversation, as I always remind you, make sure you subscribe to our podcast, the Colombo and Company podcast, with the show out as a podcast right after we got the air every day on every podcast platform. And so wherever you get podcasts, subscribe to the show. You'll never miss anything. So we sort of history lesson, kind of. In that first segment, Crane, setting the stage of where we're at and why we're here and what's been going on for decades in the Middle East. And so now let's talk about what is happening at this moment. White House officials, just about an hour ago, this latest information came out of the White House. White House officials confirmed that President Donald Trump will meet, quote, very soon with his national security advisors in the Situation Room at the White House. The administration says that U.S. strikes on targets inside Iran, including nuclear facilities, are on the table. This comes after Trump said earlier today that Iran no longer has control of its airspace. Trump said earlier today on Truth Social, quote, we now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran. He went on in another post a little bit later on and said that we know the U.S. knows where Iran's supreme leader is hiding, also, in his words, hiding, although he's an easy target and the U.S. won't kill him, at least for now. The post read exactly, Quote, "We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He is an easy target, but is safe there. We are not going to take him out." And then in parentheses, he puts kill. "At least not for now. But we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. Thank you for your attention to this matter." And then minutes after posting that, he just posted 2 words in a separate post: unconditional surrender, all caps. So it's very Trump. There's never been a president that would put out a statement that would put the word kill in parentheses or use the word kill in any way, saying, "I know you're hiding, but we know where you are and you're an easy target. We won't kill you." Literally, what he said, "We won't kill you for now, but we're running out of patience." That is not something we're used to hearing from presidents in situations like these. And I'm not saying I have a problem with it. I'm just saying it's different. And but it certainly explains, and I think that was the point. It bluntly lets the world know where the United States is at right now, and what Trump is considering, and how close he is to taking action. What are your thoughts on what the president said and the idea of the United States actively getting involved with military actions in Iran?
Unconditional really stands out, and it stands out because that's what we got from Japan, and the only way we did that was to drop 2 nukes, in essence.
Okay, let me.
Atom bombs on
I don't mean to already stop you,
yes.
but let me ask you this, because what does unconditional surrender mean? If the Ayatollah comes out and says, "Okay, we won't pursue nuclear weapons anymore, and we won't launch any more attacks on Israel. We're done. Leave us alone." Is that unconditional surrender? Because if that's that's not a regime change. So
it's a great question. That's why it jumped out at me, because as we saw the fact of, by the way, dropping those bombs, just to be clear, saved lives. Tulsi Gabbard, wake up. Shameful in her remarks regarding the fact that somehow it was like Obama blaming us. Because we're the only country ever to use nuclear weapons. We saved lives. And that was President Truman making a very hard decision, but saved lives and got the unconditional surrender only after dropping the second bomb. And there's a whole lot more to the story, but there are a lot of those liberal teachers out there, leftist teachers, who are rewriting history, and we don't learn the lessons. And that goes to the point and question you have. What is unconditional surrender? I get the idea that saying, hey, we're stepping down and we're going to work with our people in some capacity. I don't know of how that's going to be interpreted, but unconditional surrender means total abandonment of their terror network. And that includes Hamas, that includes Hezbollah, that includes the Houthis, that includes their nuclear program. And they don't have any backing. Putin bailed on them, is focusing in on slaughtering Ukrainians. Unfortunately, that's another story altogether. But the point is, we have a situation where we're calling for the end of the mulocracy, the government, the theocracy we know in Iran. He's not coming out and specifically saying that, but historically, that's how it lines up. And here's the other point to that. Why would he reference the fact that, hey, we can take you out? That's not a big deal. We can take you out anytime. And that he did the same thing to the Taliban leader in Afghanistan.
Did the same thing to Kim Jong-un in his first term.
Right. And so, and see, this is where, I mean, the Trump derangement syndrome's all over the place because they don't know where to go. And my point in saying that is, don't make it about the man, make it about the policy and the leadership, and look at everything as on the substance of the issues, and then weigh our go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I was going to ask you, after a statement like that, and that's not the only one. He's been using this type of language for the last day or so. The president, I mean, Trump. If the Ayatollah doesn't step down, if there isn't regime change, doesn't Trump have to launch a military strike? Because once you've said and once you've gone this far with with your public statements, if you suddenly back off, I don't know, will anybody ever take you seriously again? I feel like we're in and I certainly don't see the Ayatollah stepping down. I don't see the I definitely see Iran doing what they always do, what terrorists always do, is say, okay, we'll stop. You can come into the buildings and we'll took apart all these machines, and you can come in here and clean everything out, and we won't launch any more missiles at Israel, and we'll be good. And and obviously they just go right back to the drawing board and right back to planning. They said as much after October 7th. They bragged about how they had the patience to make the world around them, including Israel, start to sort of lower their defenses because they had been such quote unquote good neighbors, good actors on the world stage. It was all a long-term con to wait until nobody was prepared for it to hit as hard as possible, which will happen again if they can do it. I think the Ayatollah will come out with some kind of offer, and knowing that historically that's enough. It'll be a big setback for him, but what does he care? They've got all the time in the world, which, like we mentioned earlier, United States presidents don't. So how do you see this playing out over the next?
I think those are all very good points, because that is exactly what I think President Trump is hearing. He's hearing about the fact that, hey, you have an opportunity to be the most consequential president in the history, in American history. You're taking out a nuclear program to stop a second Holocaust. It is an existential threat to Israel. You could step in. It would be like going back to World War II and Neville Chamberlain saying, "Hey, you stop here. We're not giving up that. I don't care if there are people speaking German there. No, we're not going to happen. We're not going to throw people under the bus in Czechoslovakia. We're not going to do that." And so my point in saying that is because he came back and people were cheering "Peace in our time." Go back, check it out, please, and understand that Wages of Appeasement, actually the book, and I'm saying this, pardon me, Tony, for just putting this in, but I think it's necessary. Yeah. But they looked at Chamberlain and they were laughing at him and speaking German and making jokes about what a naive fool he was. Thank God for Winston Churchill. All right, so we come back, and this is what's being said to the president. Isolationism and the opportunity that you have right now is extraordinary. And you can truly save the world from the Iranian regime, because if they get a nuclear weapon, they will use it. So they're going to go to Fordham. I think they're going to use bunker busters. It may be the Israelis, maybe renting whatever the plane is, B-52s, and dropping those bombs, those bunker busters, because that's what they have to do at the facilities because they're built so far down. But my point is, he, in essence, in that message said, we know we could kill you at any time. Mm-hmm. That's not a big deal for us. We could kill you at any time. Plus, there's been intelligence that suggests that the Khomeini is not even all there. Khomeini is not. He's Biden.
Yeah.
Okay,
he's an old man. He may not necessarily be the one calling the shots anymore. He may. Right. There may be the next.
And there are things going on behind the scenes, I am sure, because it would be terribly irresponsible not to engage the opposition groups that are both in Iran and outside Iran. So we're not talking about troops going in. This is not one of those things. We're talking about decapitating a regime that presented a nuclear threat to the world, specifically to the Israelis. And Israel has made this easy because they've been planning for this. They've stored away drones since the Bush administration and enacting them now for this. They knew this was always coming because they knew the threat wouldn't go away until the regime, the theocracy, went away. And so I believe that's what we're seeing here. I think the president has shown that he will back up his words. You know, it was funny in the first Trump administration, he did what he said he was going to do. In the second Trump administration, I see him doing that. Sometimes I don't like the policies he's putting forth, but he says what he does and he does what he says. And he's done that. Remember, this is the man who took out ISIS. Our troops did, but he did it. And remember, we were seeing beheading videos throughout the Obama administration, okay? And we had an aggressive Russia that, hey, just tell Vlad in the next few weeks, hey, we'll be able to talk a little more. Medvedev's conversation with Obama in 2012. A lot of history here, both long and short.
But the history is important to understand.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
He's a man. I think he is in the place where they've made a decision at some point, I think, because it would be irresponsible not to say this regime is gone, because there's no way the threat ends until the regime ends.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So we got a little bit of time left here with Crane Durham from nothingbutruth.com. We're going to be joined by Susie Moore at 3:00. Before we run out of time with Crane, I want to continue down that path of what do we expect in the coming days and what do we want to see in the coming days. Sometimes what we expect and what we are hoping for are two totally different things. So we'll continue this conversation as we continue with Crane Durham from nothingbutruth.com and Nothing But Truth Facebook page right here on Colombo and Company.
Worlds apart, hearts broken into two.
If you find yourself feeling out of place in the world, it's comforting to know conservative values haven't been abandoned everywhere.
The far left want to destroy conservative values in America.
This is News Talk STL. Welcome home.
Well, we are right on the brink of actual real summer, and you can tell it's getting hot outside. You're probably spending most of your time outside, enjoying the sunshine, enjoying the warm weather. But when you come inside, do you look around and think, it's time for new flooring? If you are thinking that, I have the place for you. Check out Michael's Flooring Outlet. They're a locally owned and operated family business for more than 30 years. You know you can count on them. I've used them in the past. I had a great experience with them, and you will too. Whatever type of flooring you may be looking for, Michael's has it. Whether it's carpet, hardwood, laminate, ceramic tile, luxury vinyl, natural stone, lots of options for you to choose from. Plus, you know, with Michael's, your installation is going to be done right the first time because it's being done by the experts at Michael's and not just some subcontractor. With Michael's, you get the best combination. You get great quality and great value. So if you are in the market for new flooring, go to Michael's. You can shop in-store at one of their 3 locations, on Olive and Creve Coeur, on Town Square in Darting Prairie, or on Main Street in St. Peters. Or you can shop online. Just go to igotfloored.com. That's igotfloored.com.
Experience the true flavors of Mexico at Dos Primos, O'Fallon's premier Mexican restaurant. From sizzling fajitas to homemade caldo de pollo, every dish is crafted with the freshest ingredients and traditional recipes, all made fresh daily in our kitchen. Cool down with our famous margaritas or your favorite cerveza, while our friendly staff makes you feel like family. Dine in or carry out. Visit DosPrimosMexicanRestaurant.com or find us on North Main in O'Fallon.
Since 1995, Renewal by Anderson has helped St. Louis homeowners upgrade with windows and doors. Now it's our 30th anniversary sale. You'll get $1,995 off every project. No gimmicks, real savings, and the nation's best warranty. The offer ends June 30th, so you don't want to wait. There are some restrictions. Visit rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service.
Are the days of a personal doctor gone? Not at Body of Health Direct Primary Care. I'm Dr. Randy Tobler to share how our design is putting the care back into healthcare. Plain and simple, our members, not insurance companies, get our exclusive focus. That means same or next day appointments, responsive answers to your concerns, and a no-spin, big tool chest approach. It's about time you get serious time devoted to your medical needs. To learn about healthcare the way it ought to be, schedule a discovery call today at bodyofhealth.com. That's bodyofhealth.com.
This hour of Colombo and Company brought to you by Gutter Pros. Water goes where we tell it. Call 314-656-7195 or visit them at gutterpros.com.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 1019. Whoa, slow down. 1019 and 94.1 News Talk STL. Crane Durham from nothingbutruth.com on the line with us. Susie Moore from Red State is going to join us at 3 o'clock. And Crane, as we wrap up the conversation here, we have about 10 minutes left. Talk about expectations over the next few days, because I agree with you. I think that you are feeling like we are heading towards a military action from the United States. I feel like that is going to happen. That is what my gut feeling tells me. And if that does happen, it's not a one and done type thing. Once you get involved in a situation at that level, there's some commitments there. What do you expect happens in the when I say short term, I mean like over the next few weeks when it comes to Congress and Democrats and the media? Will there be Trump derangement syndrome? Will there be, will we hear from all of our well-known attention seekers on the left calling for, war charges to be filed against Donald Trump for launching a military strike? Will they be calling for that to stop, or will there be some unification? How do you see that playing out over the next couple weeks?
Will Senator Van Hollen have a margarita with the Ayatollah? No, he won't, because they don't drink, but he might go over there and press
Shirley
the flesh.
Temple.
Who knows?
Shirley Temple.
Yeah, Shirley Temple. There you go. Look, there are those on the left who will take any opportunity to go anti-Trump. And I haven't seen, with respect to the greater Democratic Party, I haven't seen them really be logical when it comes to our national security. They mocked Mitt Romney when they said Vladimir Putin was a threat. Of course, we all know that Vladimir Putin was a threat and continuing a threat, and he was more than willing to take land under Obama. So those are the things. But then that was the idea of, you're just going against Russia and somehow you all are stuck in the Cold War. Then they turn around and try to say Russia's the reason that Donald Trump won in 2016. Again, no logic. They're willing to throw our democracy under the bus with false allegations. They did more damage to our system than the Soviet Union did. And they were they're Americans, they're the Democratic Party, and they took away more trust in our system. Now, some people have piggybacked on that, and I think that in a different way, like January 6th, and I think that is totally wrong. But my point is, politics oftentimes will be myopic, short-sighted as it is, and they will take any opportunity to make the case if they can gain short-term politically. Fetterman obviously is not like that, and there's
I have a
exceptions to
Fetterman
the rule.
story. You know what? Here,
Yeah.
let's do this real quick. Since you
Okay.
brought him up, I'm glad you brought him up, because there's other stories to talk about today, and we will get into some of those with Susie Moore. But obviously, what is happening in the Middle East is so important, and it's changing by the moment. In fact, breaking news just reported by several different news organizations that we mentioned earlier that there was a meeting in the Situation Room with the president and his advisors, and that meeting has now come to an end. So if there's been a decision probably made on what's going to happen in the next few hours.
Real quick,
And,
Tony, quick, just
yeah.
remember when Donald Trump said if he were assassinated in some way or killed by Iran, there were plans in place to take care of that. If you remember that when he said, they wouldn't exist after that. So go ahead. Yes.
But you mentioned John Fetterman and how he's been, and we've talked on this show about how I would have never predicted this, but he's been the voice of reason coming out of the Democratic Party in many cases. Fetterman called out fellow Democrats for crazy rhetoric, criticism of DC military parade, and got booed for it. Senator John Fetterman blasted his own party's more progressive wing while responding to protesters who booed his name during the No King's Day rally in Philadelphia. Fetterman criticized many of his fellow Democratic Party members' ire towards last weekend's military parade, organized to commemorate 250 years of the U.S. Army in Washington, D.C. While discussing the criticism, Fetterman said, quote, "There was no goose stepping. And first of all, stop ever comparing anything to the Nazis and those kind of things. That's crazy. And now remember, that's our soldiers. This is not an occupying force. And this is the 250th anniversary of the Army. I'm not sure why it's outrageous to have a parade to celebrate the Army. That's not anything extreme. It's celebrating a quarter of a millennia of the American Army. I don't understand why that's controversial." Fetterman's name was mentioned during, like I said earlier, about it during a No Kings protest, and the crowd booed. Fetterman also doubled down on his unapologetic support for Israel and its tussle with Iran. Tussle. Who wrote this? Breaking with some on the left, like Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. See, here's what we're talking about, Crane. Bernie Sanders has introduced legislation called No War Against Iran Act. So that's what President Trump is going to be up against. I'm not saying that the majority of Democrats are going to side with Bernie Sanders. Obviously, John Fetterman is not. But are you serious? The No War Against Iran Act? Bernie, you're Jewish. What is wrong with you? Like,
Speaking of Nazis, ironic that they would call a military day parade showing the birthday of our army before our Constitution. I mean, this is
a year older than
nation's
the
birth.
country.
Yeah. And then do that, and then Nazis. If they want Nazis, they're you can plug them in the sense of Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Iranian regime.
Yeah.
There
John
you go.
Fetterman says John Fetterman says it's okay to have a parade to celebrate 250 years of the Army, and he gets booed for it. Crane.
Well,
that's some of the sentiment that is going to be a part of this conversation as these actions unfold over the next 24 hours.
We're in a messy time of history and politics, but that doesn't mean good can't come out of it. There are a lot of divisions that are being discovered within the Republican tent as well as the Democrat tent. I look at the Democrats and I say you're attacking law enforcement officers, you're siding with domestic terrorists, and somehow I obviously have a great deal of criticism. Ideologically, there is a rift, a chasm between the isolationists and the Reagan Republicans, and so that's also going. There are some that want tariffs and some don't. We're having these conversations. I really hope we just stick to the substance, because Tony, when we used words to mollify a situation like what was it, conflict or tussle?
Yeah.
You're describing that as a tussle?
Yeah.
Tussle. Ridiculous. Let's have a vocal debate and a spirited debate about these issues and go back and forth, but let's steer away from what we have seen from the left so often in recent times.
Let's stop softening language. Let's talk like grown-ups about what's happening on the world stage. People are being murdered. Bombs are being launched and dropped on people. And that's a serious thing that needs serious actions and consequences taken.
Amen.
We're going to continue to keep an eye on all of it. And thank you so much to Crane Durham from nothingbutTruth.com. Crane, thank you so much, as always, for the insight and information.
I love you.
And I'm sure we'll be talking to you again very soon. Again, see Crane every day at nothingbutTruth.com and the Nothing But Truth Facebook page. Love you too, buddy. All right, we're going to continue the conversation with Susie Moore from Red State. Also, another headline: Gavin Newsom's attacking Donald Trump, and he drugged the state of Missouri into it. Explain that as well next.
Condition of your windows driving up your energy bills? I was too. It's only called STL Windows and Doors. Their Provia windows combine old world craftsmanship the professional way, the Provia way, with over 65 years of combined experience, locally owned, offering competitive pricing and personalized service that the big box companies can't match. Call today for your free in-home estimate and start saving tomorrow. 314-277-5952 or stlwindowsanddoors.com.
Dr. Randy Tobler here, and I know that when you're looking for a dentist, you have to make sure you choose a dental practice that's compatible with you and the needs of your family. Well, I'd like to tell you about my dentist, Dr. Dan Cusimano, and his partner, Megan Dwyer, and their team at Advanced Dentistry at St. Charles. The great team at Advanced Dentistry of St. Charles can accommodate all of your cosmetic and restorative needs because their passion is general dentistry. Implants, crowns, bridges, even dentures, that what you need the most is what they'll provide in a personalized, focused way. And they can provide therapeutic and cosmetic options like Botox and dermal fillers. Get to know them and all they have to offer by calling 636-978-0226 or visit them on the web at advanceddentistrynow.com. That's Dr. Daniel Cusimano and Dr. Megan Dwyer at Advanced Dentistry of St. Charles.
That's Advanced Dentistry Now, 636-978-0226. Or visit them on the web at advanceddentistrynow.com.
This is Katie McKinney, founder and head of school for Lafayette Academy in Lake St. Louis. Recently, we had a new second grader come to Lafayette Academy who claimed he was stupid and hated reading. Within months of using our world-class literacy program, he was reading Harry Potter and loving it. He had just not been given the right tools. We invite you to our open house Wednesday, June 25th from 5 till 7 and hear from our current families and learn more about our dedicated teachers and world-class curriculum. To learn more, go to LafayetteAcademy.org. That's LafayetteAcademy.org.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green.
This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
This hour at townhall.com. I'm Bob Agnew in Washington. In New York today, City Comptroller Brad Lander arrested by masked federal agents at Immigration Court in Lower Manhattan. President Trump has no plans to call Minnesota Governor Tim Walz following that targeted shooting over the weekend.
The governor of Minnesota is so whacked out. I'm not calling. Why would I call him? I could call him and say, hi, how you doing? The guy doesn't have a clue. He's a mess.
Walz was Kamala Harris's vice presidential running mate on the Democratic ticket last year. President Trump says when it comes to Iran's conflict with Israel, he's looking for something better than just a ceasefire, something more permanent. Rich Thomason, meanwhile, reports it appears that Israel's attacks have already taken a heavy toll on the Islamic Republic's nuclear weapons program.
Israel's airstrikes have had direct impacts on Iran's principal uranium enrichment facility, including its underground centrifuge halls. That's the conclusion of the UN's nuclear watchdog. Israel has been hammering the Natanz site, as well as targets in Tehran, sending residents fleeing the city. Iran has been hitting back, firing missiles at Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Rich Thomason, Washington.
It's been slow going on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average right now is off by 305 points to close. Americans have been pulling their purse strings.
The Commerce Department says retail sales fell sharply last month as consumers decreased their spending after a sharp increase in March to get ahead of President Trump's tariffs. Sales at retail stores and restaurants dropped nearly 1% in May. That compares with a decline of 0.1% in April. There was a steep drop in auto sales after Americans ramped up their car buying in March. I'm Mike Hempen.
More of these stories at townhall.com.
Hey, it's Mike Rohn. If I have a choice, I like to do business with companies that actually stand for something. That's why I switched from Verizon to Pure Talk. No offense to Verizon, I'm sure they stand for something. I just don't know what it is. Pure Talk, on the other hand, is a veteran-owned company that supports our military in a big way, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I also appreciate unlimited talk and text and plenty of data for half the cost of the big guys. And I do like being on America's most dependable 5G network for just $20 a month. But what I really appreciate is no contract, no cancellation fees, and Pure Talk's commitment to handle all their customer service in this country. I saw it for myself. I went to Georgia. I got a tour of their headquarters. I met their CEO, and I talked to the same customer service folks that you'll talk to when you dial pound 250 and say keyword micro. Switch today and save 50% off your first month when you dial pound 250 and say keyword micro. Pure Talk, a wireless company that actually stands for something.
Investing
from the Michael's Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
Hot and humid today. The high temperature about 91, but that heat index getting up to 94. And we are looking at maybe just a spot shower this afternoon, but very little rain anticipated today. Overnight lows tonight in the upper 60s. Tomorrow won't be as hot because there's rain moving in, and there's a chance that we could see some severe storms tomorrow afternoon with wind and hail, the primary threats. Tornadoes possible, but not likely. I'm KMOV First Alert meteorologist Kent Earhart.
This hour of News Talk STL brought to you by Onder Law. Call for a free consultation because winning is what we do at Onder Law. Call 314 or 618-9000.
Fox News commentary.
The Democrat Party is framing their anti-ICE fight as compassionate, but really it's about cheap labor. I'm Tommy Lahren. More next.
Sponsored by AxeCap Ventures. America, listen up. Gold prices are breaking records. With inflation raging and central banks hoarding, every American should own gold. And like President Trump said, whoever holds the gold makes the rules. AxeCap Ventures owns one of Nevada's largest undeveloped gold deposits and trades for pennies on the dollar. This could be your way to ride the gold boom. AxeCap trades under GARLF on the OTC. Visit axecapventures.ca today.
Mayor Bass isn't even trying to mask it anymore. She demands the ICE raids stop due to their impact on the economy. Not only is California home to the largest population of illegal immigrants, LA has at least 800,000. Over 1 million LA residents live with someone who's here illegally. According to a 2020 study by USC Dornsife, about 11% of LA's workforce is undocumented. So when Mayor Karen Bass cries about ending the raids, what she means is, don't take away my cheap labor. These companies and industries that rely on illegals want us to feel sorry for them if their cheap illegal alien labor is taken away, but sorry, no. Do not expect the American people to play Russian roulette with our lives for the sake of unvetted and undocumented cheap illegal alien laborers, all so you can cut your payroll costs. I'm Tommy Lahren, and you can watch my show, Tommy Lahren is Fearless, at Outkick.com.
The news and talk.
The Supreme Court must put an end to this.
That matters to St. Louis.
Senior Advisor Stephen Miller called the tariff strike down a judicial coup.
Certainly the president is acting within his authority.
This is 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL. We are going to be talking to Susie Moore from Red State, redstate.com, and Red State Radio, which you can hear every Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. here on News Talk STL. Susie will be on the line with us here in just a moment. Big thanks again to Crane Durham from nothingbutTruth.com and the Nothing But Truth Facebook page. If you missed any of that 2 o'clock hour, really setting the stage for, where we're at, why we are here with the situation in the Middle East, and the latest updates, which we'll continue to keep an eye on. The president met with his advisors in the Situation Room at the White House today. That meeting has wrapped up in the last hour or so. So if there's any news coming out of that or new developments, we will let you know as we hear them. But if you missed any of that conversation, or like I always say, if you just want to make sure you never miss anything that happens here on the show, make sure you're subscribed to our podcast. We put the show out as a podcast right after we get off the air every day on basically every podcast platform. So wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe to Colombo and Company, and you'll never miss anything on the show. Like world famous journalist and attorney and talk show host, Susie Moore. Susie, hello.
Hello. How are you?
I am well. How are you? So I've got lots of things that I want to talk to you about. I didn't even let you answer. Sorry. I hope you're okay.
Yeah. No, hanging in there. Just, treading water, doing the best I can.
No kidding. So, I want to get your thoughts on the Middle East, but there's also lots of other things happening in the world. So I want to start with, and forgive me, I wanted to touch base with you before we talked, but it's been a chaotic day today. So I'm seeing these headlines, as they're happening, and so maybe this information's not out there, but I'm seeing a lot of headlines about the Supreme Court and financial disclosures. And Ketanji Brown Jackson made $2 million off of her book, and I'm seeing the headlines, but I don't know if this is a big deal or why it's a big deal, why these stories are hitting the news right now. Can you fill us in on that at all?
You and I are in the same boat.
Yeah. Sorry.
my attention has been almost, in fact, I have 200 emails, I kid you not, 200 emails of my emails that I get that notify me of court, actions going on in all the different cases.
Mm-hmm.
And most of those are, administrative actions or nothing, substantive, but I haven't had a chance to even go through those. So no, I have not been court focused at all. And I have not dug into those financial disclosures. I mean, obviously anytime a Supreme Court justice has any significant financial gain from a specific source or area, people are going to scrutinize that. You want to determine, is this something that puts them in conflict of interest? Is there something shady going on here? But I have just honestly not had a chance to look at it.
Yeah, no, like I said, I wanted to say something to you beforehand because I know it's a busy day like that. So it's something that we will definitely dig into, and we will get those that information. And if it is something, we'll fill you in on all the details. But let's get back into some of the national news. In fact, so I want to change gears off of Israel just a little bit and talk about, I just mentioned this a moment ago at the end of that conversation with Crane. There's still lots of things happening over here. And we were talking about the division in the country and how that's going to play a role in whatever happens in the Middle East over the next 48 hours. If the United States gets involved militarily, what's the support or lack thereof or opposition? What's he going to be dealing with from Congress and the media and Democrats? And so highlighting some of that division right now, there is the spat between Donald Trump and Gavin Newsom continues to heat up, and us here in Missouri got drug into it. So here's the latest there. Gavin Newsom tells Trump to grow up. He's tired of being targeted. How ironic, Governor Newsom. California Governor Gavin Newsom fired back at the Trump administration for considering the recession of national monument status from 2 natural areas in California and trying to do protection under former President Joe Biden. Trump said that he might abolish the Chuckwalla and Satilla Highlands National Monuments, the former of which is close to the Joshua Tree National Monument. And Newsom addressed this post saying, quote, "This is just getting petty. Grow up. If it's a day ending in Y, another day of Trump and his war on California." The Trump Justice Department issued a memo ruling that the president's power is reversible by future administrations and offered examples of similar actions, because I guess Gavin Newsom was saying that the president doesn't have the power to do this. But the administration is saying, yes, we do. Yeah. And then
I was going to say, if Joe Biden designated them, I would make a strong argument.
Yeah. They had precedents. There was so-and-so in 1918, it made the so-and-so act and the ruling said this. I mean, the Trump administration released all this stuff saying, no, we can absolutely do that. And then, as I mentioned, we somehow got dragged into this. Newsom also claimed on social media, he claimed a social media post by Trump expressed the notion of seeking to incite violence in Democratic-run states, to which House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Jason Smith, Republican from Missouri, responded, telling Newsom to focus on, quote, the lawlessness and crime in his own state, specifically San Francisco and LA, to which Newsom then fired back at Smith and telling him to worry about his own state, claiming Missouri has a 117% higher homicide rate than California, which unfortunately he's probably right. But the spat between Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump somehow made it here into the state of Missouri. And Susie, the reason that I bring this up is this is a perfect example of Democrats being able to dish it, but not being able to take it. Gavin Newsom saying, oh, now you're just being petty. Grow up. If it's a day ending in Y, it's a day that Donald Trump's attacking California when there's literally like 300 active cases against the president right now. I just think that it's important to point out the hypocrisy in that excuse or that statement of you're just being petty. Grow up. It's a day ending in Y. It means you're attacking us. Like, that is exactly what Democrats have been doing to the Trump administration, to Donald Trump, for the last 10 years. Your thoughts on all
Well,
this?
it is. I mean, okay, let's be honest about this. Gavin Newsom, like several other Democrats who are probably looking to increase their profile in some way, shape, or form, has figured out that the best way to do that is to get into it with Donald Trump. Because everything pretty much revolves around Trump in the news. So if you're picking a fight with him and you're getting smacked, and he will smack back because that's how he does, then you're getting your name out there and you're, firing up your base because they all hate him and everything that he stands for. So anytime you own him or whatever, they're going to be like, yeah. So that's all this is. It's just, it's a silly, stupid slap fight. Now, the only thing I will say is, yes, Trump gives it back. And I don't know enough about the decisions behind possibly rescinding these designations. I mean, I don't know why they were designated to begin with. And I don't know about the decisions.
And that specific issue is just more the reason for the fight than it is, like if that wasn't happening, Gavin Newsom would find another thing to complain about and attack the president about. He
absolutely would. And the only thing I would add to that is not that President Trump hasn't been getting into it with him, because he has, but he's also, I don't know, dealing with the G7 and dealing with Israel and Iran and dealing with trade deals and dealing with a whole host of other things on top of that. So I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm jaded. I can't stand Gavin Newsom. I know exactly what he's doing. He's doing this to elevate his profile, and it's just so annoying.
Yeah. It's so it's so hypocritical. To say to say that, oh, you're just hyper focused on us because you hate us so much, and it just eats you alive, and you just got to keep coming at it. It's like, do you hear yourself? Do you hear yourself? And I just wonder if there is any true realization, or if they do realize it, that they just think, we've got the media on our side. We can.
Yeah, I think it's all political calculation. It's all political theater. I don't think, I don't think that Gavin Newsom is dumb. So I'm sure on some level he does realize it, but I don't think he cares. This is all just about politics.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's switch gears back to what's happening in the Middle East and with Israel, and especially this, because there's some new news that has broke here in the last several minutes. I mentioned earlier that in the Senate, Bernie Sanders, where did I put the notes? I want to say the thing. It's like the No War in Iran Act. It literally is something written. It's literally almost that verbatim title. But now also 2 congressional lawmakers have introduced a resolution that would prohibit U.S. involvement in a Israeli-Iran war. And one of those is a Republican, Thomas Massey of Kentucky.
Thomas Massey.
Yeah, kind of no surprise there. Quote, this is from Thomas Massey. Quote, this is not our war. Even if it were, Congress must decide such matters according to our Constitution. The resolution said Congress has the sole authority to declare war. Representative Ro Khanna, the Democrat from California, also introduced the resolution. Said Americans don't want to be dragged into another disastrous conflict in the Middle East. Khanna went on to say, quote, I'm proud to lead this bipartisan war powers resolution with Representative Massey to reassert that any military action against Iran must be authorized by Congress. That statement, reassert that any military action taken must be authorized by Congress. Susie, that's not 100% true. So
No, it's not.
yeah. So could you what do you make of this resolution, and how could it impact the coming days and whatever decision is going to be made by Donald Trump?
Well, I'm going to answer that in reverse order. It's not going to impact what he's doing because they're not going to have the support to pass it.
Right.
Now, it's rich that Congress, which long ago ceded so much of its power and authority in this realm and a lot of realms to the executive, because it's just easier, and then they don't have to vote, and they don't have to get in trouble with their constituents, and they don't have to own anything, and they can offload and delegate it all to the executive and then gripe and moan about whatever the executive does. So it's rich that all of a sudden now they're worried about this. Obviously, I think that we should overall, let's just take it out of the Trump presidency and just look at the entire context. Overall, I do think that Congress should play a role if we're going to be declaring war. But that horse left the barn, I don't even know, like decades ago, as far as the president having the authority constitutionally to take certain acts.
Right.
Without going first and saying, Mother, may I,
right,
to the Congressional, to Congress. So, I mean, this is, again, political theater.
Right.
It's not going to pass. So great, bully for them. I'm glad that they're taking their stand.
Yeah, right. And it's not just them, but as we mentioned, Bernie Sanders has a similar resolution happening in the Senate. Do you think this has any impact on Donald Trump when it just comes to support? Do you think that by trying to create some division or friction there, that has any influence? No.
I mean, obviously people on the left that are dug in on the left. They're just going to oppose no matter what. They could even be pro-Israel, but on this, because Donald Trump is doing this, they will oppose it. There's plenty of people in the middle that, I know there was some polling that just came out that said the American public, by and large, is supportive of this administration and of what Israel is doing as far as, making sure that Iran does not progress and get its hand on a nuclear weapon. And so then you've got like the Fettermans of the world that are like, yeah, go ahead and bomb them, take it out.
Right.
There is a faction on the right. We'll call it the Tucker Carlson faction that is very undone right now over this. And that's unfortunate, but are they going to start supporting Gavin Newsom now? I don't know. I just don't think it's going to affect him in terms of his approval ratings or his popularity. I think the objective American public is looking at this and going, okay, yeah, Iran's a serious problem. This is escalated. Israel's doing what it has to do to defend itself, and he's going to back him up. Now, that could change if this were to turn into a protracted, involvement, and you have boots on the ground, and you have that sort of thing. That's a different calculation. But I don't think we're looking at that. And I think people that are making that argument are probably making it's kind of a red herring.
So not necessarily legal analysis, just your opinion as somebody who covers the news and has been watching this unfold and develop over the last several weeks. And this, like we talked with Crane, this has been going on for decades, if not centuries over there. What do you expect? What do you think is going to ultimately happen? At least in the short term, do you think that we're on path to military action by the United States? And if so, how much and for how long? And what ultimately do you think the results that we could attain are?
If I'm, gaming it out, I'd say 60-40 chance that we do get involved to a limited extent, and possibly for the limited purpose of taking out Fordow, where the main facility is, because we have the capability of doing that. I don't see us getting involved from a boots on the ground perspective. And I think it's entirely possible that we might not get involved if, the mullahs and whoever's in charge in Iran at this point says, okay, here's our unconditional surrender. Here's the white flag.
Right.
We
Right.
did.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to do that, but
what is, well, that's a good question, because what is unconditional surrender? Because what is a victory? What is the proper victory? Whether you think it's going to happen or not, because to me, Trump says unconditional surrender, all caps. That's what has to happen here. If the Ayatollah or whoever's running the show, as you mentioned, and we touched on that a little earlier for people that don't follow this, there's been many reports over some time that the Ayatollah is in a Joe Biden type mental situation where he's not necessarily the guy running the show. Is that accurate, Susie, from what you understand?
Yes, he's 86. He may not be in the best of health. He may not be the one actually calling the show.
Exactly. So whether it be the Ayatollah or whoever it is, if there is still, if that regime is left in charge, I'm not sure that that's a true victory, because we've seen terrorists and bad actors in the Middle East and around the world. As we said earlier, they're very comfortable with the long game. So they'll say, okay, you got us. You can come in here. Here's our facility where we were building weapons. You can tear it apart and you can do this. And we'll sign a ceasefire and we won't launch any more missiles against Israel. And, just leave us alone and go home. To me, that just, it makes the world a little bit safer for a little bit of time, but it solves absolutely nothing. If there's not a regime change, I don't know that is a true victory. That's just my opinion. What's yours?
Well, this is why I said 60-40, because in my view, what Trump means when he says unconditional surrender is a complete abandonment of any efforts to enrich uranium and to pursue a nuclear weapons program. And I think, if they could confidently assure that there were, the ability to verify that, I don't think he cares if it's the Ayatollah in charge or not. I don't think this is about taking out the Ayatollah. I think it's about taking out the nuclear weapons program. So if there's some way to ensure that can be done short of regime change, I think he'd be okay with it. But I don't know that there is a way to make sure that can be done, to your other point. So that's why I think what may end up happening is, we go that extra step in this instance to ensure that it's a physical impossibility, at least for a few decades, for them to do that. And, it's, I don't know. It's the scary time. It's a fascinating time. I don't envy people that are having to make these decisions, because they are tough decisions. But I think we're kind of at that point where backing off at this point is, I don't think, an option, because then we're just going to be right back here in a few years.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I don't think you can say that, hey, we know where you are and we could kill you, but we're not going to kill you for now, as long as you do the right thing, and then send another statement that says unconditional surrender, all caps. I don't think you can. I think you either have to get what they have to concede to what your demands are, or there's military action. I don't think that there's another option there at this. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's where we are.
I agree. There's a reason why Trump and his close advisors went to Camp David last Sunday. I don't know if you noticed that, but when I first saw on the schedule that he was going to Camp David, I was like, something's up, because he hasn't been. This is the first time he's been in his term.
Yeah.
And so this has all been gamed out, and I'm sure obviously some circumstances change as they go along, but I think they're pretty committed to doing something definitive here.
Only a couple minutes left here, Susie. Last question on this, and then I did have one case that I wanted to bring up. It kind of lightened the mood a little bit before we wrap up the conversation. But last point on the Middle East. Right now, it looks like Israel and the United States are as synced and together and unified as maybe we've been in a while. Do you think, again, just your opinion on this, do you think that Trump's goal ultimately matches with Netanyahu and the people of Israel, or could you see, because I definitely see, an outcome of Iran does enough to say, okay, you can have our stuff and come in here, and but it not be enough for Israel, but it is enough for the United States, and that's another complication then down the road. How do you see that playing out?
I don't think there's a whole lot of daylight between them.
Yeah.
And I think that that's been true for a while. I think there have been times when they've played like there is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I think a lot of this groundwork has been being laid for a long time. I think some of it was being laid when he went to the Middle East not long ago.
Yeah.
And so, no, I think that they're pretty copacetic on where they stand on that.
I hope you're right, because that unity and, more importantly, the resolve of the two countries is the only thing that will make this time period any different than we've seen in the past. You've got to, if they're gonna go, they've got to go, and they got to stay united and stick to the plan. Otherwise, we'll just be having this exact same conversation. Maybe it's not for a year, maybe it's not for 5 years, but it will happen again if allowed to. I mentioned this court case yesterday, wrapping things up with Susie Moore. Like I said, a little lighter topic, but it's still a very important one. I don't know if you saw this, and it's okay if you didn't, because all the details are here. The Supreme Court handed down Ed Sheeran a legal win yesterday. This was another one of those, they just decided not to hear the case so that the ruling stays with the lower court. And this is one of what we've seen a lot lately. By lately, I mean over the last few years, and specifically from Marvin Gaye's family, but others, that a lot of new music, and this is going to just happen as time goes on. There's only so many chords, in the world, that if you sound inspired by or sound a little bit like an old song, there's a lot of legal action that have been taken against artists. And I think this is a good one, that the Supreme Court has declined to hear it, meaning that the lower court stands. Ed Sheeran is not guilty of copying Marvin Gaye. Now, as I mentioned yesterday when we touched on this, if you're just blatantly copying somebody and you're just ripping off their work or their song or whatever it may be, then yeah, you should be called, you should be accountable for that and maybe have to, pay for that. But this whole hey, if you speed this song, if you pick this song up to double time, it kind of sounds like this song over here. Well, yeah, but that song's not in double time because that's not how they wrote it. So so I think this is a really good thing for the music industry moving forward. I wanted to get your thoughts on this, and also the Supreme Court making this decision. In your opinion, does this kind of hopefully put an end to a lot of these lawsuits, or is this a singular case and we're still going to see this type of battle play out over and over again?
I don't think it really puts an end to it, because you're not talking really about precedent setting. You're just saying, look, we're not going to hear this case. And it could be for any number of reasons, and there could be variables in this situation that would be different in another situation. So I don't think it's really going to be precedent setting. I think it's just one of those. And by the way, the Supreme Court denies cert on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases every year.
Yeah.
We just don't hear about most of them. So it's one of those things that, I don't think that's going to bind anything. I didn't follow the cases all that closely, but I do remember being familiar that it was going on. And, as you said, there's a point at which, I think everyone can agree, look, that's just a complete ripoff. But then when you start talking about sampling or similar chords or chords that echo, but in a different tempo, that sort of thing, it's at some point, creative license, I guess, has to have its way as well. And, I do think that those are decisions probably best left for juries to decide if people are going to get involved in litigation over them. And here that decision was made. So it's going to stand. And yes, that's a win for old Ed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a win for the music industry and creativity in general. That's my own personal opinion. And you'll not find anybody that's more harsh on people who steal. I don't think this was stealing in any way. And if you are, then I think you should, like I said, I think you should be held to account. But that's not what I see here. And I think the frustrating thing is that it's just all a personal opinion. There's no way to, in black and white, subjective, write down what constitutes piracy or copying or whatever it is. It just is a group of people listening to something and going, it sounds a little too much like this. And there's just there's no line to know that you can or can't cross. And that can get very frustrating. But I thought it was a win, if only a small one.
Yeah.
For
absolutely. He can definitely count it as a win.
Yeah, for sure. Susie Moore, thank you as always for your time. Don't forget, you can check out Susie's articles every day at redstate.com and tune in every Sunday, 4 p.m. for Red State Radio here on News Talk STL. We will talk to you again very soon, my friend. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Tony. You too.
You bet. All right. Before we hand things off to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show, let's get another catch up. Let's check everything and get you the latest. Make sure we're up to speed. We know what's happening in the Middle East and with a couple of the other headlines of the day as we continue here on Colombo and Company on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
Follow Tony Colombo on Twitter at Tony Colombo Talk. News, analysis.
I'm glad you're talking about this.
Opinion.
I'm glad you're fired up about it too, because I know I am.
News Talk STL.
Farmers Co-op Old Town Country Store in Old Town St. Peters. Here we are, for over halfway through the month of June. And finally, it looks like maybe we are getting into the summer season and getting outside. And this is the area that the Farmers Co-op can help you in so many different ways. I would call them like a farm and home store on steroids. I don't like to use that title because there's so much more than a farm and home store, but that's sort of the best way to describe what they are. But then it's just, so much more on top of that. They can do so much for you around your home, in your lawn, in your garden. If you do any type of property management, if you do any type of animal care, they have a full line of products for animal care, including farm livestock down to, the family dog or cat. They have smaller services like they'll fill any size propane tank for about half the price of a new one. Huge line and selection of products and services for your yard and garden. And like I said, property management, body of water management, anything like that. Farmers Co-op, Old Town Country Store has you covered in so many different ways. You can visit them on 2nd Street in Old Town St. Peters, right behind the QT at 70 and Mid-Rivers Mall Drive. You can see the big 2-story grain elevator from the road. That is them. That's the Farmers Co-op. So once you got eyes on that, you know exactly where to go. And you can also learn more by going to the website, oldtowncountrystore.com.
Attention St. Charles, looking for a local spot that satisfies all your cravings? Mario's Donut Restaurant is your place to go for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. From mouth-watering sandwiches and omelets to delicious gyros, Mexican dishes, salads, and wraps, we've got it all. And don't forget our famous donuts. They're so good, they'll make your eyes glaze over. Dine in or carry out. Our friendly staff is ready to serve you with love and care. Mention News Talk STL when you visit. Call 636-447-4515 or visit mariosdonutrestaurant.com.
This is Larry Connor's commentary on News Talk STL.
There are still many questions about the murder of a Minnesota state lawmaker and her husband. Suspect is in custody, identified as having a list of 70 targets, many apparently politicians. Obviously, violence is not an answer, and this act should not be politicized. But the left is anxious to find a boogeyman and tie him to conservatives. Leftists and legacy media quick to point out the suspect had voted for Trump. Not so fast to point out that Democrat Minnesota Governor Walz had appointed the guy to serve on a state board 2 different times. A former roommate to the suspect quoted as saying the guy would be offended if people called him a Democrat. Democrat Senator Murphy said we should stop walking on eggshells about MAGA legitimizing political violence. Really? How many recent acts of political violence have involved conservatives? Never mind. We don't have time to do a countdown. Just remember the riots costing billions of dollars of damage in 2020. Democrats rooting for rioters, even bailing them out. You cannot justify that action nor that attitude. Hopefully we learn for the future.
Get more Larry Connors on Larry Connors USA.
Tonight at 6 on News Talk STL. I want to tell you more about Wellington Environmental's dustless blasting services. Wellington can blast paint, grease, graffiti, even stripes off parking lots. Truly amazing and powerful. But can Wellington blast something more sensitive? Yes, Wellington can use dry ice to blast soot and odors off smoke-damaged surfaces right after a fire. Currently, Wellington uses dry ice to clean mold off wood inside a home. Why? Well, dry ice immediately disappears, turns into a vapor. That means no mess to clean up, no damaged surfaces. You need to check with Wellington, always researching and practicing with new, better, faster, safer equipment and products for you. And it's very easy to schedule an estimator for your next project. Call Cindy, 314-644-4930, 644-4930. Be well with Wellington.
Looking for an underwater adventure or a scaly new friend? Dive into Tropical World Pets on Watson Road. For 32 years, this family-owned wonderland has been St. Louis's go-to destination for all things aquatic and reptilian. With over 7,000 square feet of aquariums, we're home to the area's largest selection of freshwater fish, including rare cichlids you won't find anywhere else. But that's not all. We've got tarantulas, snakes, and lizards galore. Tropical World Pets, 314-849-4020, or visit twpstl.com.
As you know, Vincent's is not just my favorite jeweler. Vincent's is my only jeweler. And I was in recently looking at lab-grown diamonds. These are not glass. They are actual diamonds, but they cost a fraction of a natural diamond. You can check them out at Vincent's.com, or better yet, see these lab-grown diamonds in person. You're going to be amazed at the beauty and the price. Vincent's Jewelers, Vincent'sJewelers.com.
I'm Dr. TJ, owner of the Institute of Natural Health, co-owner of Optimal Nutraceuticals, and the host of Wellness One. Wellness One is designed to cut through the nonsense and provide you common sense science-based information regarding health and wellness. On the show, we discuss topics like thyroid health, gut health, hormone optimization, and many others. Our show airs Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. right here on Newstalk STL. And you can visit us at inhstl.com. That's inhstl.com.
Great patio season to enjoy any of the Cafe Napoli locations. How about the Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield? Enjoying coal-fired pizza, nothing else like it. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. A few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, where you can enjoy premium cigars and whiskeys. Check the Lit Cigar Lounge Facebook for details, plus gift cards for friends. I'll see you at Lit Cigar Lounge in Chesterfield.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 101.9 News Talk STL. About to hand things off to the Tim Jones and Chris Arp show here. Also the O'Reilly Report in just a moment. Quick update. Speaking of Tim and Chris, our very own Chris Arps has been amazing, reporting live from Israel for the last week or so. He is currently making his way home. So we wish Chris and his wife safety as they return, and hopefully we will be hearing from Chris back here live in the studio very, very soon. As I mentioned, just in the last hour, there has been a resolution introduced in the United States Congress by a Republican and a Democrat, Thomas Massie out of Kentucky, along with Ro Khanna, the Democrat out of California, introducing a resolution to attempt to prevent Donald Trump and the U.S. launching any type of military action in Iran. However, as we just had that conversation with our legal expert, Susie Moore, there's not really anything they can legally do to stop that. Trump had a meeting this afternoon with his advisors in the Situation Room, and we will continue to monitor that situation and keep you informed every step of the way as this ramps up and whatever is going to happen or not happen in the very near future in the Middle East rolls out. We've got you covered here at News Talk STL. All right, Colombo and Company. Ashlyn, we'll be back tomorrow at 2:00. In the meantime, keep it here for the O'Reilly Report next, followed by the Tim Jones and Chris Arp Show.
Hey, it's Vic Porcelli here with our great friend Chris Cooper from Serenity Wealth Management. Hi, Chris.
How are you, Vic?
I don't want to put anybody else down, but when you go up and visit you at Serenity Wealth, your place looks like home.
So a lot of financial advisory offices, they have, the big mahogany desk or the big marble entryways and things like that. The stock market channel on the TV when you walk in the door, right? That doesn't really drive a good conversation. Good financial guidance and advice starts with a good conversation. People are nervous. People are afraid to talk about finances, right? And so you can see a little standoffish. Well, my objective is to try to have a good casual conversation. By having those conversations about life, goals, objectives, it's what makes me understand what our financials are supposed to